Welcome back to another episode of the Capes and Tights podcast right here on capesandtights.com. I'm your host, Justin Soderberg. This episode, we welcome back David Pepose to the program to discuss his latest comic over at Dynamite Entertainment, Space Ghost, a wonderful new superhero story over at Dynamite, a story that if you're into superheroes, you're going to love. If you're into other things and sci-fi related, you're going to love. It's a real starting on point. If you don't know who Space Ghost is, no worries. An awesome comic book to check out. So we chatted a little bit of the devil that wears my face, David's independent comic book with Alex Cormack over at Mad Cave, and much more. So enjoy this episode with David Pepose, award-winning writer of Space Ghost. But before you do, check out Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky, Threads, follow us, like us, share our stuff, all that stuff, as well as rate, review, subscribe over at Apple and Spotify and all our major podcasting platforms. Check us out on YouTube as well as capesandtights.com. This is David Pepose, award-winning writer of Space Ghost at Dynamite Entertainment. Enjoy, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast, David. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're basking in the glow of Space Ghost.
It's amazing, overwhelming in the best possible way, but I couldn't be more excited, more grateful to see how excited everyone has been about our new Space Ghost series. And I hope everybody sticks around because the fun is only just getting started. We've got a whole year's worth of stories planned out with room to grow. And I couldn't be more excited. So thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So let's get started. Are you a Space Ghost fan? Is this like one of those? Is this like a dream come true job? Not just because you get to write an iconic character, but is this like iconic in your own mind too? Is this like one of those things that when you got this job, you're like, oh crap, here we go?
It was one of those things that when Dynamite first approached me to take on this book, I could see the ingredients. And I think that was the thing that really drew me to this project. Was not only was Dynamite saying like, hey, what do you think about starting off for a year? Giving me a really long runway to work, but also I just knew Alex Toth was throwing out fastball after fastball with Space Ghost. And for me, he strikes me as a character that has all the ingredients of an A-lister. You could say that it's like, what if Batman fought crime in the Star Wars universe? But he's got, that amazing design that's endured for 60 years. He's got this wide array of powers with his power bands that give him power over lasers and fire and ice and force fields, and his Inviso belt that lets him turn invisible, and the Phantom Cruiser and Ghost Planet, his headquarters. He's got a really cool, engaging supporting cast. He's got his three sidekicks. It's Jan and Jace and their pet monkey Blip. And then this deep stacked bench of villains, like a rogues gallery that's every bit as iconic as something that Batman or Spider-Man or the Flash might have. And the fact that there's a character that has all of these things, and in terms of a superhero storyline, has really only been explored in 5-minute increments. With the original Hanna-Barbera cartoon. And as far as comics go, there was a miniseries, and then Space Ghost sort of popping up as almost like a bookend supporting character in the pages of Future Quest. It all felt like unexplored territory in a genre that's usually been so thoroughly mined. And for me, I was just like, this is a character that has all these things and no one has told a story with all of it. And so it just was an irresistible opportunity for me. Of course, as I've been promoting this book, it only occurs to me the day of release that I was like, oh, this feels like Ultimate Space Ghost to me, where it's brand new continuity, an easy jumping on point, like a perfect way that if you don't know who Space Ghost is, we're going to make you fall in love with him, and we're going to show you why he's the greatest superhero in the galaxy. And that's it's one of those opportunities that it really doesn't come up very often, to have this amazingly vibrant and robust superhero universe, and nobody's touched it. And so I feel so fortunate to be able to take on a project like Space Ghost. It's been one of the most fun books I've ever written. I haven't had this much fun on a book since Savage Avengers. And it's just been I hope the enthusiasm shows on the page.
There's the Savage Avengers.
Oh, hey, I see Cloak and Dagger back there.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite covers in the entire run. Jenny Friesen.
Yeah, but the
Um,
funny thing is, one of the things I thought was kind of cool about it too is like, first of all, I knew of Space Ghost and I knew some
yeah,
things about Space Ghost and that it really hadn't been really touched in a while.
yeah,
And so that was cool to me, but also I felt like it's like on this side of things and having talked to you before and knowing behind the scenes kind of stuff and things like that, like that space doing it is cool because there's not very many people who have said like, well, David didn't do it as good as so and so, do or is doing it better. Do you know what I mean? Like when someone gets
yeah,
Daredevil, it's like Chip gets Daredevil. It's like, oh, cool, but you didn't do Bendis's Daredevil. I mean, did you see Bendis's
right,
run? And it's like it's
right.
kind of cool because it's like this is like you can't be like, well, I tried to take some things from this person, and it's like you really have very limited in a sense things to pull from too. And so like it has to
Yeah.
be almost a new story. And I thought that was kind of cool in that aspect that like this to a lot of younger generation people might be like a new character in their mind, like that they don't actually know the actual history of from the 1960s. Like this, they might not even know it's been around for a while.
Exactly. Well, and I think it speaks to something that we regularly overlook, I think, as creators and publishers and people in the industry is that we're used to, a lot of us are lifers. We've been at this for a long time, but there's churn
Mm-hmm.
in this business. There's churn in the readership, and I think it's easy to underestimate how many new readers have shown up. And so, for me, like you see, like Joe Kelly and Ariel Olivetti did their Space Ghost miniseries in 2005.
Yes.
It felt like a Batman Begins kind of origin story for the character, very standalone. But that was almost 20 years ago.
Yeah.
There's a whole generation of readers that have shown up since then who have no idea that book exists. Or even, Future Quest. Future Quest came out, it was, I think like 2016, 2017.
Yeah.
So that was right when I started as a creator. And so there's been a whole new shift of readers who have no idea that that book exists. And so I think that's been the thing that in certain ways, it's been an interesting realization for me is that there are a lot of people who, especially the ones who weren't sure about like a serious superhero take on Space Ghost, where they don't know that this isn't even the first time that it's been done. But
Mm.
I do think that this is the first time that it's been done to the scale that we're doing it. We really are treating this as like almost like Batman: The Long Halloween,
Yeah.
where we want to do kind of the Space Ghost world tour, where we want to explore his supporting cast, his relationship with Jan and Jason Blip, and how that evolves and changes over the course of the series. But we're also doing primarily done in one adventure, so we're able to hit all of the Rogues Gallery, every member of the Council of Doom, plus a few deeper cuts that you might not expect. We're really trying to, if we have a year worth of runway, I thought this was a great way to do a distinct beginning, middle, and end, and really distill everything I love about the Space Ghost universe into one cohesive narrative.
Mm-hmm. And the idea that you have such a long runway is also an unheard of in in a sense
Yeah.
in the comic book industry. And also I think that like one of the reasons that even if younger middle generation here who knew about the early 2000s Space Ghost and even the 2016 2017 iteration is that when it's at a bigger like a not bigger publisher but one of the big twos like DC or something like
Yeah.
that, it still confuses I think some readers that I don't know the continuity of DC that well, so I might not
Okay.
understand even if it's not connected in a way. And
Yes.
so with it being at Dynamite and being
Yes.
like a fresh, Dynamite's put some energy and effort behind it. Obviously, you've been on the road doing
Yeah.
these kind of things on in social media and all that stuff. It's like it feels like a new beginning that no one should say, well, I don't know much about Space Ghost because you learn
Yes.
enough and it sets you up enough in this first issue that you can go, okay, now I'm ready for the future.
Yeah.
I'm ready to buy at least 12 plus issues at least. I mean, that's what's
Yeah.
pretty cool about it.
My thinking is you nailed it on the head, which is there's a whole generation of fans who have no idea who Space Ghost is, or they only know him as the talk show host from Space Ghost Coast to
Yes.
Coast. They have no idea that this is a cartoon that's lasted for decades.
Mm.
Or that is endured for decades, dating back in 1966 with the original Hanna-Barbera cartoon that kind of came right on the heels of Adam West's Batman, and so you see a lot of the shared DNA in those old cartoons. And then you have the 81 revival, which was kind of as a contemporary to Super Friends and Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. You can see a lot of shared qualities there. And then, yeah, of course, Coast to Coast, kind of really distilling the MTV generation, that sort of ironic comedy. And then, yeah, then even like I said, Joe Kelly's run, it came out right before Batman Begins, but you can see like the shared zeitgeist between
Mhm.
them. And so for me, it's like Space Ghost is always a product of his time. And so for me, that was really the fun challenge of this was how do we bring in a brand new continuity, an easy jumping on point. You don't need to know who Space Ghost is. I've done the homework for you. How do we do all of that through the lens of modern day storytelling techniques? Something that, like I said, we're doing a lot of done in one stories for that reason, is so we can cover the maximum amount of ground possible through all that. But also just yeah, like I think there are a lot of people who are like, oh, I know that costume. And for me, that's what's been so exciting is there's so much potential beneath that costume. And to be honest, that's the benefit of the original cartoon is they didn't have any backstory, they didn't have any continuity. It's very easy to honestly connect those dots, and you'll see, by our second issue, you'll be up to speed with everybody about as much as one needs to be. And yeah, it's just seeing how enthusiastic everybody's been. I think Space Ghost is the kind of superhero that people want. They
Mm-hmm.
want stories that are easy to jump onto, that aren't bogged down by continuity, that you don't have to read a bunch of other titles to understand, but also, have done in one self-contained adventure. So, every month you're going to get like a cool story. And at the same time, trying to tell a story that has a little bit of a longer runway, that you're able to kind of invest a little longer in it. And so that's, I've been listening. Everything that fans say they want, I've been trying to do for a book like Space Ghost, and it's been really heartening, at least in these early days, to see that it's been really paying off.
I mean, you mentioned doing the research. Did
Yeah.
you watch like a bunch of the old stuff? Did you read
Yes. I
everything?
watched
Did you
I
like?
watched
Do you?
every episode of the original cartoon. I watched every episode of the 80s revival in Space Stars, and I took detailed notes on every single episode. Um, my pitch document that I sent to Dynamite was over 30 pages long. The notes document was almost 50 pages. I reread all the old comics. I read the 2006 run. I read the Future Quest. I read Future Quest Presents. I read Mark Evanier and Steve Rude's Comico one shot. I wrote the Gold Key one shot.
Mhm.
Anything that I could find with Space Ghost, even when Space Ghost teams up with Batman and the Brave and the Bold, I rewatched that and took notes on that. So yes, I kind of know that core universe backwards and forwards at this point. And yeah, I think there's just, like I said, Alex Toth, I read somebody refer to him as the Jack Kirby of the Hanna-Barbera stable. And I think that is
Yeah.
like a perfect way to describe him. In that guy, his designs were so iconic and eclectic that they endured for 60 years.
Mhm.
And they added so much to each character in a show that didn't have time for character development, that
Yep.
didn't have time for backstory or continuity. You see Zorak, for example, and you're like, oh, that looks like a sadistic, evil, homicidal praying mantis. And that was, those are qualities that I was then able to kind of latch onto for my take on Zorak, and what kind of wrinkles could I add on to that character. You see it with Brack, where like that guy's more blue collar in his aspirations. He's a space pirate. He's knocking off the nearest gold freighter with his brother Sisto. Things like that. And that was a show that existed exclusively on vibes,
Yes.
and that's what's been so exciting for me is that like, oh, like I can latch on to each of these characters and be like, there's something about them that really stands out to me. What can I add to those characters to play up that quality? I think that's been a really fun exercise, and it's really it's allowed me to explore how vibrant the villains are, and
Mhm.
then being able to contrast that with this really cool found family narrative that we have with Space Ghost and his sidekicks, as Space Ghost kind of is struggling not just to be like this spacefaring crime fighter, but also really the ultimate single dad, and how this kind of found family comes together, and the friction that they have against one another, and how sometimes they have setbacks, and how sometimes they kind of learn and heal from one another, and how Space Ghost ultimately reclaims that lost humanity that he pressed down so long ago. So yeah, it really checks all my boxes. I love this book, and I'm very excited for people to see kind of
We can't
our
tell you love it at all. No, so when you do research, and this is not just, I guess this is not just a Space Ghost question, but this is a
Yeah.
question you've recently just wrapped up Punisher over
Mhm.
at Marvel. Your Savage Avengers. Do you look back at some of these things and research these to know the characters, but also what stories have been told, so you try not to tell those stories as well, like so you are have some
Yeah.
originality on it, but like Is there like some, I'm guessing it's a multifaceted research. This isn't just a,
Yeah,
I need to learn about the universe kind of thing.
yes, 100%. And it does depend on the project. Like, if it's something like Space Ghost, for example, where I'm like, I know I can watch all the original cartoon and I can watch all of Space Wars, the revival. I can feasibly do that. Whereas, like, if I was, writing Daredevil, there's
Yeah.
no way I could read all of
No.
Daredevil.
No.
That would be a lot. But also, like, I'm lucky when I'm working on something at Marvel, where like I would be reading Marvel every week even if I wasn't working there.
Yes.
So I'm usually pretty up to speed on stuff. But even like, yeah, Savage Avengers, when I started on that, I reread all of Jerry's run.
Mhm.
Just because I wanted to get a sense of like what was going on, in that book. And for me, it's less about like, oh, where do I draw from in terms of continuity? A lot of times it's exclusionary. It's
Mhm.
okay. I know this person did this. For Joe Kelly, example, the Joe Kelly run on Space Ghost, that was very focused on Space Ghost himself. It was very much how this character went from being a space cop to being betrayed by his unit to being left for dead, and then kind of coming back as this new vigilante identity. And so I knew rereading that, I was like, I don't want to retread that ground.
Yes.
And that was kind of the reason why I wound up positioning Jan and Jace as our point of view characters, sort of the way that Kitty Pryde was the POV
It-
character when she appeared in X-Men. Because I thought, oh, that's a perspective that hasn't been told yet. Jan and Jace kind of only appeared very sporadically in that Joe Kelly miniseries. And so, and same thing for Savage Avengers. Like I read it, and while there was the initial kind of semi-team ad hoc roster in that first arc, after that first arc, it was Conan teaming up with
Yep.
various members of Marvel Universe. And so I thought, okay, like the first thing I said when I was offered the assignment was I want to have a permanent team. I want to have a
Yep.
permanent roster because that's something that run hadn't had. So yeah, that's kind of, I do as much research as I can to just get a sense of what has been done elsewhere so I don't double up on that.
Yeah.
Like even like when I wrote Moon Knight City of the Dead, like I reread all of Jed McKay's run, which I
It's
love, and
fantastic.
is
It's a
masterful.
fantastic.
It's a fantastic book.
It's so
And
fantastic.
so it was like, okay, like how do I, that was part of the reason why I put him in the City of the Dead, was I was like,
Yeah.
okay, that's like a different thing than what Jed's been doing. And that's actually the reason why I wound up doing using narrative captions in that book, was I was like, okay, like I don't want to come across as somebody who's gonna try to parrot Jed and do a worse job at it. So let me try kind of like a different sort of thing with
Yes.
that. So yeah, but also the research is fun. Like that, it's sort of, it's in the same way that I get to write off buying comics on my taxes.
Yes.
Like I get to be like, oh, I get to read comics for work and I'm actually doing work. This is fun. It feels like I'm kind of goofing and cheating the system a little bit. So yeah, it's whatever I can get my hands on. And then of course, like obviously working within a deadline. But
Yes.
I try to absorb as much as I can, just to kind of keep the character fresh in my mind and figure out like, the more I read, the more I can kind of get a sense of like, oh, that's something that stands out to me
Yeah.
about that
I mean,
character, and I can kind of extrapolate from there.
this is obviously still someone's intellectual property, like
Sure.
when you were writing for the big two at Marvel or DC. Like someone created this character, and now I'm guessing Dynamite has a license for
Yes.
Space Ghost. But how much do you have freedom? Do you have freedom to create
I have a
characters,
ton of
kill off?
freedom.
Like, do you have like it's pretty open wide?
It is crazy the amount of freedom that Dynamite and Warner Brothers has given us on this book. It is, you would not expect how much freedom they've given us. I'm in the middle of writing issue 5 right now, and I think I've gotten 3 notes since we started the process. And I can tell you, like, one of the notes was like I'd asked if we wanted to give Jan and Jace superhero names, and the licensor was like, I don't think we need that. I was like, cool. Um, I think one other line, they had one line note where they were just like, oh, could we make this line like sound a little more spacey? Sure. It was in issue 1, where Tanza, I had him say holy flark.
Mhm.
I had originally just had him say holy. They're like, could we make it a little more space? And I was like, holy flark, done. Warner Brothers has been the best licensor I've ever worked with by a country mile. They are enthusiastic about what we're doing. They immediately understood the vision. They were so excited. I've seen some of the notes they've given us, and I can tell you, having worked with a lot of licensors, I've worked with Lucasfilm, I've worked with Conan Properties. to have a licensor who I can literally read the comments being like, that rules, yes, that's exciting. That is so refreshing. That is so wonderful. They've really given us all the latitude that we need and could ever want to really explore Space Ghost News universe and to develop it in what we think is the most dynamic and character-driven way possible. It really, like I've never had a book like this before, where I really get to have all the fun of the superhero genre and all the tools of the superhero genre, and none of the structural obstacles that come with it. And that's not disparaging anything. It's just when you're working on a shared universe or you're working on licensed IP, when you're in a shared universe, you have to share the toys. You have to,
Yes.
that's a lot of what your editors do is they know where all the bodies are buried. They help you navigate the flow of traffic. Whereas if you're working on a licensed IP, the licensors understandably, can be very protective of that sort of thing, where they've got their own priorities of like, this is what sort of makes the lore make sense to them,
Mhm.
or this is sort of where they think a character can and should go, or here's where they want to steer you away from. And so having none of that, being able to say, I want these toys and here's what I want to do with them. And everybody's like, yeah, that's cool, run with it. It is such a gift.
Well,
And
it
it
must
really,
feel like somewhat like you're writing a creator-owned title in a IP world. Like it must like
yeah,
it's basically like it's not your creation. Obviously, let's get that by obviously David
right.
didn't create Space Ghost, but having the ability to have the freedom to really go. I mean, you and Alex were able to go wherever you wanted to go with The Devil That Wears My Face,
Yeah,
because it's your title.
right,
Whereas if you were to go over to immediately and continue instead of doing 4 or 5 issues of Punisher, you're doing a year's worth of Punisher. There's a
right.
lot more limitations on than you're going to get a year's worth of Space Ghost, which is really cool.
Exactly, exactly. So it's been a real kind of like pinch me sort of book, but like I said, the way that I've been approaching it, it's sort of like Ultimate Space Ghost in a lot of
Yeah.
ways, where we're able to sort of throw you in. We'll tell you what you need to know as you need to know it, but otherwise, like, just buckle up for the ride. You don't need any backstory. You don't need to read anything else. I've had a lot of people ask like, oh, do we need to read Joe Kelly's miniseries, or
Yeah.
do you need Future Quest? And for me, it was both an ethical and pragmatic and probably legal standpoint. No, you don't have to do any of that. It didn't feel right to try to crib off of another publisher's
Yeah.
like IP or another publisher's continuity. Space Ghost, in fact, has already had two different continuities at DC. So I was just like, better to just start with a clean slate. Like,
Yep.
all you have to do is read issue one to get in on this. But also, yeah, legally, I didn't even know if it was permissible to do
Permissible
something
to
like
do that.
that.
Yeah.
So I just figured it was safer all around. And I know Warner Brothers was very encouraging and enthusiastic about all that.
That's amazing. And then you have so obviously not just you. We're talking to you, so you're the
Because I'm here.
focus
Yeah.
of it right now. Yeah. But you have your creative partners and stuff. So it's like Jonathan and Andrew and that team. Like, is it like the 12 like your years worth of people going to
As
be
far
the
as I
same
know,
or okay?
I know Jonathan Lau is moving at a Terminator speed. And as far as I know, I think he's booked in the book for the long haul. I certainly hope he is. Yeah, he's been fantastic on this book. Jonathan really he's nailed everything. Like, he's able to switch gears between these big bombastic hero moments, and then he's immediately able to like turn on a dime for these like really heartfelt emotional character moments. And I think that's really important for a book like ours. I a lot of what I like about this book is, yeah, of course, we've got like the high flying sci-fi spectacle of it all. And by the virtue of the diversity of how many villains Space Ghost has, we're able, and by the way that we're structuring it is primarily done in ones, we're
Yeah.
able to tell a lot of different stories with a variety of different flavors, where we're drawing from a variety of influences and inspirations and genres, but I think ultimately the big part of our book, the through line of it all, is it's a coming of age found family story.
Hmm.
This is about, it's not Space Ghost year one, but it is kind of Jan and Jace year one. And
Yes.
so that's what's really exciting for me, is that I didn't want Space Ghost sidekicks to be seen as accessories. I
Mhm.
think that's the big difference for me beyond the space setting, is that you have Batman, for example. You can tell stories with Batman without Robin and they still feel organic. I don't think you can tell a Space Ghost story without those three sidekicks. I think having three sidekicks is a very pointed statement. And so for me, I really wanted to play into that. And so that's why, like, for me, Jan and Jace read like Babs Gordon and Dick Grayson meets Lex and Tim from Jurassic Park. And I do think like that dynamic of Lex and Tim with Dr. Grant in
Yeah.
Jurassic Park, that is kind of the Rosetta Stone of our book in a lot of ways. Like Space Ghost is a great cosmic vigilante. You put him in a room with a pirate, he knows exactly what to do. Raising two kids and a pet, that is a little beyond his expertise. And so there's a degree of friction that goes into that. And you'll see it especially in issue 2 is one of my favorite things I've ever written because it's Jan and Jace's first night on Ghost Planet, and it predictably does not go great for any of them. But that's, I think, the core character trajectory that we're experiencing this entire book is that Space Ghost being the survivor of his own tragedy, being the sole survivor of Ghost Planet, and that is what has sort of put him on his quest for fighting pirates across the galaxy. He's had to push his humanity like way down. He's been
Mhm.
isolated. He's been by himself, and I think having these two kids with him at all times, it sort of is forcing him to kind of look in the mirror a little bit. It's forcing him
Mhm.
to kind of reckon with that humanity. I mean, even the name Space Ghost. This is a man who's playing at being a monster, and suddenly he can't do that anymore.
Mhm.
Um, and at first, like anybody who has a problem, when you're confronted with it, you resist it a little bit because then you have to admit that you have a problem. Then you have to admit that not only do you have to change things, but that problems inevitably cost you something.
Mhm.
And that's sort of I think a lot of fun that we're having with this series. Is that like seeing that ongoing dynamic, seeing Jan and Jace as their own sort of yin and yang. Jan being sort of the responsible one, but also the feisty one. She's a crack shot with a blaster because she, as the only girl in the family, she's had to think
Yes.
things through where her impulsive brother does not. And she feels like if I don't keep an eye on things, my family's gonna what little I have left, I'm gonna lose. And
Is
so,
is
but
it the
that
Princess Leia and Luke? Like, is it
yeah,
like?
you're right. It is. I had not thought of it until you just said it that way, but you're dead on. It is like little Princess Leia. Um, where yeah, she takes charge. She's the one who
Yeah.
calls out Space Ghost to his face. And Space Ghost, he would rather just like fly to an asteroid field than like deal with the wrath of a 13-year-old girl.
Yeah.
That is like
See.
too much for him. But I feel like Jace, meanwhile, he's the impulsive one. He leaps before he looks. He's the natural gearhead, the pilot, the engineer. He's also the comic relief. I
Yeah.
say that he's closer in emotional intelligence to Blip, the monkey, than he is Jan. But he feels like he has to be the one making jokes. He has to keep morale up. He's trying to keep things light because if people aren't laughing, he worries he's going to lose what little family he has left. And that always breaks my heart. He's probably my favorite character in the whole run. So seeing Jan and Jace kind of play off each other as this yin and yang, and then Space Ghost is the straight man. It's a real fun dynamic, especially because Space Ghost, he has a little bit of a biting sense of humor that comes out often as like kind of like a real sharp zinger at the kid's expense. Again, this Dr. Grant personality where it's like Jace is like bothering him about like how do your power bands work, and he's like, if you ask me one more question, you're sleeping in an airlock. And I think that makes Space Ghost a really fun and complex character. I mean, when you first meet him in this issue, you see him in a remove. He's like a force of nature.
Yeah.
He's scary, and to the point where the kids are scared of him. And it's only by the end that you see like, oh, there's more to him, that there's like a complexity to him. There's an inherent goodness and nobility that he's willing to take in these kids because there's nowhere else for them to go.
Hmm.
Um, but there's also sort of this begrudging, he was a bachelor. He was living his life in his own way. And now suddenly, you've got these kids where he feels responsible for them. He feels like he's got to protect them. He feels like he's got to train them up to defend themselves, which is how they become his sidekicks. But they start to grow on him. And
Hmm.
that's the issue for him, is that like any parent, having a kid means it's your heart running around on the outside. And in this
Yeah.
case, he's got two of them, plus a monkey. And that's going to weigh on him
Yeah.
as the series progresses. He's going to find himself more and more protective of these kids. and ultimately they all come from kind of complementary tragedies. And that's what I love so much about this book, is that we're going to see that dynamic like coalesce and come together. They're all going to kind of heal each other, but there is going to be a little bit of back and forth. Sometimes there's going to be a step back before there's a step forward. But I think it allows us to keep evolving these characters and to keep having like emotional goalposts in every single issue. Every single issue I've thought, how does that relationship change? And that has made this, I think, like a really, it's the best of both worlds. Because ultimately, you can have all the sci-fi spectacle in the world, but if you don't find a reason to love these characters, it doesn't mean anything. So
Yeah,
I'm hoping that as people read this book, they're going to fall in love with these characters just as much as I have.
I think that a thing to be said about this Space Ghost being at Dynamite and being a superhero story. You know what I
Sure.
mean? It's a straight. So if you're a fan of something like Superman or Iron Man or any of these people, you can be a fan of this. But also, it's for everybody. Like it's not just for. I mean, I think you really have to be into like sci-fi kind of style comic
Sure.
books to actually get this. But like, but even that is like, we mentioned continuity earlier. About
Yeah.
how you really don't need any is that we have a book club at my local comic book shop every month, and we read a trade
Mhm.
paperback. And there was like this comment made about how we were like, it was like week after or month after month we were doing independent comics. It would be, something's killing the children, then it'd be nail, but
Right.
but it's like, well, it's so hard to pick a big two trade paperback that
Sure.
has very little lead up to it, that you have to be like, well, if you read the series before this one, you
Right.
really understand this. And but also like a superhero comic at a big two comic book is a superhero comic. Like there's not very many, emotional depths to a lot of these comics. It's, oh shit, the world's about to come to an end. We need to save it. I mean, I really like Jed McKay's the new Blood Hunt. I don't know, did you read it
Yeah.
yet?
Yeah.
I really liked it. I haven't been excited for a Marvel crossover event. I don't know how
It's
long.
great.
And this was like, I'm so excited for this. And even that though started off with like bombastic, like world ending like stuff. It wasn't even like obviously you learn more in like Moon Knight Vengeance and stuff like that. But like this is like there is that, but there's like some emotionalness to it and
Yeah.
more heart to it. And I think that even if you're like, I don't know, I don't know if I don't read superhero stories. Like I feel like there's something here that you could like give this a shot, give Space Ghost a shot because it's a different superhero story. And I think that's ultimately what I'm looking for nowadays is like something different. And that, that's that I don't know. And that Space Ghost to me. And again, I've been a fan of your writing, so that helps too. When you see the detachment of a character that I'm interested in and a writer that I'm interested in, and
Sure.
then I fell in love with Jonathan's artwork because again,
Yeah.
it has the big two-ness to it, like the superheroes to it,
He's
but
so
also
good.
has that independent feel that's like it's a mixture of everything, and I just love it.
Yeah. He's got this really hyperkinetic style. I've been a huge fan of Jonathan since his work on Green Hornet with Kevin Smith years ago. And I think he's only delivering the work of his career. And the best part about this book is that every issue he gets better. Every
Yeah.
issue looks better than the one that came before it.
Well, I hope it doesn't get worse.
No, I mean it is frightening. It is frightening how good
That's
everything
awesome.
has been looking. And it really and he's so fast with it. I mean, he's drawing at least a page a day. And sometimes more. Like I said, it is like being stalked by a Terminator.
Yeah.
Like I have to turn in issue 5 like by the end of the week because I know that if I don't, he will not have pages to draw. That's how fast he moves. And so yeah, I think yeah, and I think he understood the assignment immediately, which was just like this is an ensemble book ultimately.
Yes.
He knows to make Space Ghost look really cool, but he also knows that like this is also the kid's story.
Yeah.
And the fact that like he draws the kids as kids, that immediately I was like, oh, thank God. When I saw him draw Jan and Jace for the first time, I was like, great, like we're in good hands. Because I think it would be so easy to either draw them as adults or draw them, shove them in the background,
Yes.
rather than like it's a coming of age story.
Yes.
And so yeah, but I think to speak to your other point, I think um the cool thing about Space Ghost is, and I think a big difference between him and Batman, for example. Batman's a character that is designed to run continuously
Yeah.
for 60 years. At this point has almost run for almost 100 years, which is crazy. Um, and Space Ghost, I don't think is built that way.
Mhm.
And I don't, I'm certainly not writing in this way, in that we're not writing this to have him last for a decade uninterrupted. We want to have a beginning, middle, and end. We want to have like a satisfying trajectory, and I think that's what having that other approach is sort of what leads to what we call the illusion of change in a lot of superhero titles, where like you can change things, but inertia,
Yeah.
like nothing lasts forever. Like, and sometimes it's sort of something changing, it just changes to the next change. You see it like Daredevil, for example, where that sort of almost is like an exquisite corpse of, one writer comes up with something and then he leaves the book on a cliffhanger and he gives it to the next writer and the next writer's got to figure it out.
Yep.
Um, but also like of course there's this, anything changes and eventually it goes back to the status quo or something a little bit more familiar. You see it, all over the place. Space Ghost, we don't have to do that. Space
Hmm.
Ghost, we really can say like, okay, how do we change these characters? Not from like a concept perspective, not from, oh, we're gonna give Space Ghost a brand new costume, we're gonna give Space Ghost brand new powers. And I understand that feels a little counterintuitive in the market because, of course, whenever you do that, you get a little pop.
Yes.
Uh, for me, it's more of like, okay, like Space Ghost starts to care about these kids, and these kids, meanwhile, are starting to, think, they have their own thoughts and opinions about
Yep.
the mission and seeing those sorts of things change and evolve, that's what's interesting to me. And being able, I think not having to worry about, well, can this character sustain for another 10 years uninterrupted? I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
I'm just going to tell this story as a story, and I think as people read it, um, I think that might be a little refreshing to them. And I think that's the antidote that I would love to introduce into the business is that like I know it's so easy to just kind of be like, well, let's throw in like a big world-changing concept change.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, that's fine, but I do think that we've done that so often that sometimes there becomes this expectation that every book needs that or it's
Hmm.
not it's not worth it. And I just want to kind of remind readers that like what it's like to just love a superhero story for it being a superhero story, for being characters that we enjoy and fighting interesting villains and putting them on interesting adventures and not having to just constantly reinvent the wheel.
Hmm.
Because I think conversely, readers are also tired of that.
Hmm.
Readers, I mean, Lord knows, I certainly heard it a lot during our my Punisher run, where we did a legacy Punisher. I can't tell you how many people were mad that like, oh, well, why can't we just tell a Punisher story? Well, there are reasons why we did a
Yes.
legacy Punisher because like sometimes you do have to change things up. But like, all right, I'm listening. I hear you. And we are telling a Space Ghost story.
Yes.
And I think that's enough. You know.
Y-
And
Yeah.
I think as people get to explore this universe, like you said, it's new, it's unexplored territory. That's enough.
Yeah. I
And I
think that's, yeah, exactly. Having to re so like if people who become fans of Daredevil are fans of
yeah,
Daredevil, like, and then they can then take their preconceived notions of what Daredevil is. I mean, I guess my friend Paul and I for Star Wars, our Star Wars week, we're recording this ahead of when it comes out, but we recorded it and it comes out. It's been out now, so everybody go
yeah,
listen to it. No, we recorded reviews of the first three Star Wars movies, 4, 5, and 6, and it's like if people hate 7, 8, 9 because not because they're bad. It's because
yeah,
in their mind they go, "This is what I want movie 7, 8, 9 to be," and then they didn't do that, and now they're pissed that Lucasfilm didn't get into your mind and take your ideas and put them on screen, and that's why they're mad. And that's what they don't say that, but that's most of the reason why people get mad at these continuity characters and these larger universes is that you're not telling the story that I want to hear, and that way therefore you're wrong or therefore it's bad and
yeah.
so on and so forth.
It's
With
it's
this it's like I can read this and there are obviously some older stories. We mentioned this came out in 1966, so this is a
sure.
older character, but to me it's like you can't write anything that's going to piss me off because I don't know where you're going with it because
There's no rule
it's
book.
all
I
new.
Somebody, I saw somebody mention this to me the other day, and I've been thinking a lot about it, where they had said, I don't know what a Space Ghost comic is supposed to be.
Yes.
And I think that's a broader question that you could ask about a lot of books is like, but I think that is a question. I don't know how we got ourselves to this point, But I think that's a question that I would ultimately love for us to kind of move away from. Is it's not, these characters are more flexible than you think. And I think Space Ghost is a perfect example of it because, like I said, he's existed as 1960s Adam West camp. He's existed as coast to coast surreal humor. He's existed as both as like a hardcore standalone superhero origin as well as part of like a diverse Hanna-Barbera universe. It's all valid.
Hmm.
And I think that's the thing for Space Ghost, sort of, our sort of ultimate Space Ghost kind of take is that it's all valid. And I think the more people can sort of interact with the work, that they can engage with the work for what it's trying to do, versus, well, yeah, if it's an entirely different thing that you don't want. I mean, of course, like, listen, if you're in the mood for steak and I'm taking you out for McDonald's, like, yeah, then you'll want to read a different book that gets you that steak feeling. But that doesn't mean that my book has done something wrong.
Hmm.
That might be you're looking for the wrong sort of story for what the book is. And so that's something that I I'm hoping to sort of correct a little bit in my own personal way, is that like I just want to tell a good story.
Yes.
And sort of, no expectations involved. Just kind of tell the best possible story I can with these amazing ingredients that I've been given. And I think to see so many people who have given this book a shot and have said like, oh yeah, like I didn't know who Space Ghost was. You're our target audience. I there was a time I didn't know who Space Ghost was. It wasn't until I was in college that I knew who Space Ghost was. And I can certainly tell you, as I did research on this book, I learned a lot more about Space Ghost that I wasn't aware of. And so, if I'm the perfect demo for this, you're the perfect demo for this.
Yes.
So, yeah, it's been really nice to just see everybody giving us a chance and coming away seemingly really satisfied.
That's awesome. And Dynamite it's a win. It's a win-win for Dynamite in my opinion too. Because and Dynamite's been doing a lot of things more recently. I mean, I'll tell you, I've been collecting comics for years. I took a break and then I went back into it, 10 years ago, whatever it was, and so on and so forth. And I used to be a Marvel zombie. It was like every Marvel title on my pull list and nothing else. And then it
Yeah,
slowly went to some other ones, and then now I think in more recent weeks, it's like if I pull 10 comics, it's like seven Marvel and three, or sorry, seven independent, three Marvel, and it's just slowly gotten that way. And I mentioned a little bit about the crossover events being not my favorite things that have come out,
sure.
and a lot of my pickups from Marvel are like City of the Dead or Punisher or these one-off stories. Marvel Unleashed from Kyle Starks is
Yeah,
unbelievable, people, and those things. But like, so Dynamite, I don't know, prior to potentially their pickup of Gargoyles
yeah,
and like those ones, Darkwing Duck. I don't know if I had ever bought in a Dynamite comic book, and that just happened to be, I'm not a Vampirilla fan. I'm
sure.
not those that we like to call booby
The
booby
pulp stuff
books.
is very generational. I totally understand.
Yes, and then so I'm not into that, and so like part of me goes like, okay, that's what Dynamite publishes, and then I see, like I mentioned, Darkwing Duck, Gargoyles, and then you see them
Yeah,
doing a lot of like the Disney, the villains and stuff like that. Villain stuff is awesome over there too, and then something like this, and I'm like, okay, you got a customer out of me too. You got me some buying some things, and then Dynamite does a wonderful job on their variant program. So like they have a number of variants you could pick up for us. So not only are you getting me to get Matina's cover A, you're getting me to buy the blank variant. You're getting me to buy,
yeah, Jay
six
Lee and
different
Michael Cho, and
variants.
yeah, Dylan
Like,
Moran.
yeah.
Well,
And
but
so
I
like
think
I think it's a win-win for them, honestly.
I think you hit on something really interesting, and I think it speaks back to that earlier thing that we were talking about, which is, yeah, you're exactly right that like there are people, I've heard people say, oh well, like I have this perception of Dynamite, or Dynamite only publishes these kind of books and I'm not into it. And I think it goes back to the idea of what is Dynamite supposed to be, you
Mhm.
know? And I think it's something that I understand why we've gone into this place. There's so much stuff to choose from, and in terms of entertainment and
Yeah.
content, and you only have a limited budget, you only have a limited finite amount of time, and also a finite amount of time to choose. But I
Yes.
think if people can steer away from like, oh well, this is what I think this is supposed to be, because I think that's so limiting, and I think it closes you off to really interesting stuff, but it also closes you off for an opportunity for somebody to surprise you.
Mhm.
And I think, yeah, like Dynamite has been on this amazing upswing. I'm so proud to be kind of part of this new Warner Brothers lineup.
Mhm.
Because you have people like Declan Shalvey on Thundercats with Drew
Yes.
Moss. You have uh, Joe Casey and Sebastian Perez on on Johnny Quest, and you have Kelly Thompson and Paulina. I'm gonna butcher her last name.
Yeah.
You have them. And it's like, oh, to be like a part of that, it feels like you're part of the Yankees,
Yes.
or like a big up and coming team. And yeah, seeing the way that Dynamite, I admire that they're a hungry publisher, that
Hmm.
they're a publisher who, they'll email me and say, hey, like, what do you think we can do to help push this? And I've never gotten an email like that before, from a publisher. This book is not a statistic to them. And I think it is certainly not a statistic to me. And I think that has been what's so great about this book is that, like, I know they've got other books that they got to promote and other books they got to work on, but for
Yeah.
me, this is my big swing for 2024. Like, I'm working on some big two stuff that I think will be coming out next year, but like I am committed to Space Ghost.
Yeah.
I'm on this book for 12 issues and an annual at minimum. I'm committed.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think seeing the way that Dynamite has really stepped up their game in a time where the market needs every publisher
Hmm.
to step up their game, needs every publisher to try something new and take the biggest possible swing. It makes me feel like I'm in the right place. And yeah, it's just, we're trying to offer retailers something fun for them to sell, something easy for them to sell, but also giving readers just something to be excited about.
Yeah.
I remember when Krakoa came out, that
Yeah.
got me through the pandemic.
Yeah.
It is my dream to deliver a book that's half that good. That gives people even half that kind of feeling that I had. And yeah, so knock on wood, high aspirations, but that's what gets me out of bed every day is certainly trying to reach those heights, and I couldn't be prouder to be part of Dynamite doing that.
Well, I will say also Dynamite. I guess I mentioned the Dynamite's now one of my regular pickups. I think every week because I think there is one of either a Disney villain or Lilo and Stitch or whatever coming out every week, and now Space Ghost. But my LCS owner, Paul Eaton, who owns Galactic Comics and Collectibles here in Maine, is a huge fan of The Devil Wears My Face too. So like you got Space Ghost here, but like, and you did a wonderful run on Punisher too, and it's like, but Devil Wears My Face is like one of the independent comic books of the year in my opinion, and that
Thank
and that
you.
and that it's wrapping up as of timing of this episode recording, but I think by the time this actually drops, it will
Yeah, May
be
8th,
out May
it will
8th.
be
And
issue
then
six.
what I do like about Mad Cave too is I think the trade comes out in June, right?
June or July, yeah.
Yeah.
July 10th. I just looked that up last night.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're not gonna have to wait very long
No,
to get
I
that.
love that aspect. Too many times I've looked up like a big two thing. It's like the book ends in February. You'll see it in October, and it's like, come
Yeah,
on. If you missed
yeah,
out on the first few issues, you have to wait a year to actually read it. Like,
right.
come on.
Whereas Devil, yeah, you can pick that up, and I'm so happy with how that book came out. Alex Cormack is one of the
So
best
good.
collaborators I've ever worked with. Lovely guy, very gracious and extremely freakishly talented, and inhumanly fast as well. Yeah, I'm so excited for that book. It's Face Off meets The Exorcist. It's about a Vatican priest who is performing an exorcism, and the ritual backfires, and so he finds himself trapped in a stranger's body while a demon has taken over his body to wreak havoc on the Vatican. And yeah, issue six, it's been a long time coming. We've got a twist that's going to turn like the whole series on its head a little bit. We've laid out a few breadcrumbs that nobody's spotted yet. But it's very personal to me, and I think as you read it, and anybody who sort of knows anything personal about me, you'll sort of get a sense of like, oh, this is why Pepose wrote this book. And so I'm very excited for all of that. I've been sort of chomping at the bit for people to get to read it, and I think it's some of the best creator-owned work I've had the pleasure of being a part of. I cannot wait for people to read issue six. So call your local comic shop. Make sure they get you a copy of Devil Wears My Face. If you've missed out on the book, definitely have them order you the trade,
Trade.
because I think this is a book that it's been really fun in singles. In trade, it's going to read or in reading it all in one shot.
Yes.
It's going to be a really it's an even better experience, I think.
And I honestly wouldn't be surprised if it ends up on our list of things to read for our book club because they said Paul absolutely loves the book so much. I love it too. I'm just saying he loves it so
Me
much that
too.
he's just like,
Listen,
oh, you're talking to
I'll
David?
sweeten
Tell
the
him how much I
pot.
love it.
I'll sweeten the pot. Tell him if he wants to do it and he wants me to zoom in, I will do it. I
Yeah,
will show
see,
up and
there
do
you
that.
go. See, do that. But also, just to let everybody else know, one of my favorite books you've written is Scout's Honor. So I'm just gonna go there
Thank
and
you.
tell you that.
Thank you. That was a really fun book that honestly changed my career. And I think now with stuff like Fallout and Silo and The Last of Us out, like I think post-apocalyptic is in. So definitely order Scouts Honor through your local comic shop.
Yeah.
Book about a post-apocalyptic Boy Scout cult. Yeah, I was really proud of how that book came together. That book got me my career at Marvel, so I'll always be grateful for it.
Yeah, I'm grateful of that. Yeah, but yeah, definitely. But yeah, so Space Ghost is out now. I mean, like I said, the first issue dropped. It's been I've seen what I've seen, and I've been paying attention to because of obviously you coming on the podcast and talking. I've been paying attention a little bit more of how the reviews and the reception is to it as it comes out, and it's amazing. You get some big people out there, going to bat for you and things like that for it. It's wonderful. I can't wait to see where it goes. Like I said, I think it's up there and near perfect first issues because it gives you groundwork without giving too much away.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel lost because I didn't know who Space Ghost was. And that's just like that
Yeah.
alone is huge for me. So that's
I
amazing. It's beautifully made too. So there's that too.
Thank you. Honestly, like we're trying to make this book for as big and broad of an audience as possible. I mean, the only people who won't like this book is if you don't like sidekicks. If you don't like sidekicks, you're not gonna like this book, and there's nothing I can do to change that. But if you don't like sidekicks, you're not gonna like Space Ghost as a character. So that's
Yeah,
really
there
on
you go.
you and not me.
Well, see,
Uh,
maybe I like it so much because I'm a huge Scotty Young fan. I feel like all of his independent work or his creator own stuff is like
yeah,
person and a sidekick and a person and a sidekick. So
But I will say like when we have sidekicks, they're not hostages. Like I think
yes,
we've been working really hard to like make them capable and have their
yeah,
own agency and just have them be fun and funny and intelligent and capable. And so I'm really enjoying writing my babies. And just wait because the fun is only just getting started. You can still pre-order Space Ghost #2 and 3
yes,
through your local comic shop. Issue 2 is our first night on Ghost Planet. Lots of fun stuff. And then issue 3, we're introducing the next member of the Council of Doom, the villainess known as the Widow. Jonathan did a spectacular job bringing her to life, and I can't wait for everybody to see it. It's a really cool heist adventure with
mm,
Space Ghost and Company, and lots of twists and turns, as well as some clues as to our overarching narrative for the rest of the series.
that's amazing. And buy the single issues, people, because I'm a floppy guy. I absolutely
Yeah.
love single issues, and I do a lot of times I end up buying the trade afterwards, which is like great because you guys get double dipping on me. But
Yeah.
is there a plan for like a halfway trade and then a trade at the end, or do you think it's gonna be collecting at the end, or do you think?
I'm not sure. I
Okay,
gotta ask that in my question. I would imagine this is just me guessing. So if it
yeah,
doesn't turn out this way, don't pull out the pitchhorks. But I imagine probably be similar to what they're doing on Thundercats.
yeah,
I know just announced that they're doing a trade for the first 5 issues, and
yeah,
the way that I've paced it, that would be a good trade point for us as well.
yeah, cool.
She's 1 through 5 for the first trade. But I don't know the answer to that. I will. I guess I'll email them and ask them.
Yeah.
I should
Well,
know
I mean,
this.
there because they
Uh,
say I'm a big floppy kind of guy, but I understand. Like I
yeah,
can sympathize with the people who are trade waiters,
yeah,
because they like that format if it's better on their shelves. They like reading it all at once.
totally.
It's the same thing with people who like
I
when
want
shows
trades
it
of
now.
this, because they're always fun to sell at conventions.
Yes,
So I totally, I don't know the answer to that, but I would venture a guess that if they're doing something similar to what they're doing on
Thundercats
Thundercat,
thing.
they'd probably do something similar for us as well.
That makes sense.
But yeah, I mean, also though, if you're buying it month to month, I mean, I didn't really touch upon it too much, but I look at books like Ryan North's Fantastic Four or Steve Orlando on Scarlet Witch, where they did a really great job doing a lot of done-in-one adventures, and so that was something that I think was really important to me. Is a lot of people don't know who Space Ghost is, so if we do a bunch of done-in-one adventures, we're sort of racking up the adventures, and so people get to know him better because instead of just doing, what I've done in the past where, it's a 5 issue arc.
Yeah,
No, that means that like we're having, 4 or 5 adventures, like individual adventures across those first 5 issues. Like we're only doing a handful of two-parters for Space Ghost, like most dangerous villains.
yeah.
Really reclaiming the power of a cliffhanger then. But otherwise, I wanted to make sure that, if somebody drops in for a month, they get a full adventure. They get like a beginning, middle, and end. They get a sense of who the villain of the month is. They get a sense of where Space Ghost and the kids are. And it's been a really great way to structure the books, honestly. It sort of allows me to, it's like running a marathon, but doing it at sort of a sprinter's interval, where I'm able to sort of break it up. Where I'm like, okay, this month I'm kind of feeling like doing like a horror kind of thing.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, two-parter with Zorak. Or hey, I'm gonna do like a heist issue this month. All right, that's something with the Widow. Or hey, I want something like a bigger, bombastic superhero, slugfest. All right, something fun with Metalis coming up. Maybe something that's a little more offbeat and heartfelt. Well, stay tuned for Creature King later this year, and that really allows me to, I think, shift gears in a way that I don't exhaust myself. Where I think it's very easy when you're doing a full standalone 5-part arc where you got to lock into one tone and you have to maintain that tone for the entire time. That can exhaust you. And I don't have to do that with Space Ghost. I get to just kind of follow my art, follow my instincts, and doing it as an issue to issue basis. Hopefully that'll make this book as accessible for anybody who's curious about the book.
That's awesome. I said I'm pumped about it. Not that I'm the end all be all of opinions here, but I do highly recommend it. And obviously, like I said, it does help when a creator like yourself is so amped about it as well too. When you have this love for it and this passion for it, you wouldn't be creating it unless you like, if you wouldn't be working this hard on it unless you loved it. And if you love it, you're gonna work harder on it. So that's really cool too. But also, The Devil Wears My Face, buy that too.
Yes, please.
Honestly, if you want a good read, buy anything that has David's name on it, first of all. But I'm a huge Alex Cormack fan too, so that just helps a lot too. So there's that. But Devil Wears My Face is out, in the final issue's coming, and then the trade paperback is out soon as well. And then the trade for Punisher's out in May, right?
Yes, I believe it's the end of May.
End of May. So
pick that up at your local comic shop.
Yeah, there you go. So there's all that. You got all kinds of stuff on there, but keep an eye on Space Ghost from Dynamite and from David and from Jonathan Lau. And Andrew Dahlhaus did amazing colors on this too. I'm going to drop that out there. And Taylor Esposito's letters are phenomenal as well. I wanted to quickly throw that in there before we wrap up here too. He's fantastic, and you got a dream letterer on there. Except for right now, it seems like any letterer you get that's like notable as a dream letterer at this point. Yep. We've got a pretty rogues gallery of letterers right now on the market, so This is pretty cool. But yeah, thank you so much, David, for taking time out of your day to talk Space Ghost and so much more. I know you're a busy man, and I'm glad you came out to talk to us here on the podcast.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And thanks to everyone listening. And tell your local comic shop to add Space Ghost to your pull list, because we've got lots of fun stuff coming.
Yeah, and check out the covers. There's many covers to it, and it's really cool to find the cover that suits you the best. No one's asking you, if you want to buy multiple ones, but no one's asking you to buy multiple ones. Just pick the one that works the best for you. That's my opinion on variant covers right now. But thanks a lot, David. I really appreciate it, and have a good one, okay?
Thank you too. Bye-bye.